Let's see. Balanced breakfast. Yeah. Stephen Colbert. Syringe emojis. Yeah. And asterisk. Yeah. There. I said it all, so you don't have to. How do you talk about Barry Bonds? He certainly left behind a complicated legacy. An absolute titan of baseball for over 2 decades, he captivated the sport first as a power speed guy in the mold of his father, then later as the most ungodly combination of strength and discipline the game has ever seen. From 2001 to 2004, no, I gotta stop myself already. The years of 2001 to 2004 are a creative trap for me. The numbers are so outrageous, I don't even have to do anything creative with them. We could just drool over these stat lines and use phrases like video game numbers for the next 10 to 15 minutes, and you'd probably still think it's a good video. That's why I'm opting for some self-imposed limits. In Barry Bonds' 22-year MLB career, he stepped into the batter's box 12,814 times. We're going to take a look at just 4 of those instances, just 4 plate appearances to sum up what Barry Bonds meant to the game of baseball. Some at-bats I won't be doing a deep dive on are the home run chases. Number 71, no thanks. Number 756, not gonna do that one either. Another thing I won't dig deep on, Francisco Cabrera's single to left field in the 1992 NLCS. Bonds was named regular season MVP that year, but his throw was weak and just a little offline, allowing the Braves to advance to the World Series over Bonds' Pirates. That offseason, he would join the San Francisco Giants in free agency, and it was during that 15-year stretch in San Francisco where he would become baseball's version of an anti-hero. And he'd also take 4 plate appearances that I desperately want to talk about. It's May 28th, 1998. Diamondbacks at Giants, bottom of the 9th. The Giants are trailing in an 8-6 ball game. There's 2 outs, the pitcher is Greg Olson, not that one, and Barry Bonds is walking up to the plate with the bases loaded. Even in the midst of a Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa home run chase, Bonds still might be the guy you want most in this spot. Why? Because he was already the best player of the 90s. From 1990 to 1997, he led Major League Baseball in classic counting stats like home runs and RBI, as well as WAR. With all this in mind, let's ask the pressing question. Do you pitch to Bonds? As evidenced by the lengths pitchers went to avoid him, Bonds was indisputably the most feared hitter in MLB history. But the bases are loaded. It seems like Greg Olson has been backed into a corner. He has to pitch to Bonds, right? Diamondbacks manager Buck Showalter felt otherwise. They intentionally walked him with the bases loaded. We can't say for sure how many times this has actually happened, but Barry Bonds became, at the very least, the first hitter intentionally walked with the bases full since World War II ended. Bonds' career is synonymous with the intentional free pass, but this was 1998. His intentional walk season was 2004, when managers outright refused to pitch to him on 120 occasions. Bonds put up the top 3 seasons for intentional walks, and his 120 in 2004 dwarfs Willie McCovey's 45 in 1969. For his career, he had more than twice as many as the next guy, Albert Pujols, and he had more intentional bases on balls than Hall of Famers Nap Lajoie, Roberto Clemente, Pudge Rodriguez, and Andre Dawson had walks in general. But was walking Bonds the correct choice? Let's take a closer look. Charlie Hayes and JT Snow represent the tying and winning runs respectively, likely below average runners, but let's assume they're average. According to Tom Tango, about 2/3 of runners score from second with 2 outs on a single, and about half score from first on a double. If we use Bonds' 1998 splits versus right-handed pitching to him theoretically yields a 30% chance to at least tie, and an 11.7% chance to walk off an 8-6 ball game. And I should say, this is quick and dirty math that disregards the possibility of, say, a wild pitch or passed ball. The batter the Diamondbacks chose to face instead was journeyman catcher Brent Mayne. If you use Mayne's career splits versus right-handed pitching and assume he won't be walked, Mayne would have a 26.7% chance to at least tie the 8-7 ball game. That's lower than Bonds, but his chances of walking off are greater at 19.8%. So, from a purely statistical perspective, Bonds is more likely to drive in the tying run from second than Mayne is from driving in the tying run from third. Even though Mayne theoretically has a greater chance to walk it off, walking Bonds with the bases loaded gives the Diamondbacks the better chance at winning in the 9th inning. And what was the outcome of Mayne's at-bat?
Line to right field, but right there is the right fielder to make the catch, and Arizona has won in dramatic fashion.
A couple other notable hitters have been intentionally walked with the bases loaded. The aforementioned Nap Lajoie earned his free pass in 1901, and Josh Hamilton was given the Bonds treatment 10 years later. What did these freak occurrences have in common? The team issuing the kamikaze intentional walk won the game. The numbers don't make it abundantly clear that walking Bonds is the right move, and I would also like to point out that Brent Mayne got unlucky here. His line out to right field is similar to this one by Jonathan Villar, which had a .462 expected batting average, as well as this one from Max Kepler, which had an 83% chance of dropping for a hit based on the exit velocity and launch angle. All three just happened to hit it, more or less, directly at the right fielder. But that's also not really the point. Buck Showalter didn't know any of this math. He did know, however, that Barry Bonds scared the bejeebus out of him, and that was enough to force him into a desperate decision. Let's talk about what happens when you pitch to Barry Bonds instead. It's October 20th, 2002, Game 2 of the World Series, Giants at Angels. The Giants are leading the series having taken Game 1, but trail 11-9 in Game 2 with 2 outs in the 9th. Those 2 outs are in thanks to Troy Percival forcing flyouts from Rich Aurelia and Jeff Kent. But it's Barry Bonds' turn to hit, and he's at his absolute peak powers. Then again, so is Troy Percival. From his debut in 1995 through 2002, he was one of only 5 pitchers to strike out 30% of batters faced, and his 2002 might have been his finest season on record, earning MVP votes in the process. Do you pitch to Bonds? You have to. If Bonds reaches base, the tying run comes to the plate. You don't want that. Troy Percival has to get after Barry Bonds. That's easier said than done, not since the great Ted Williams had a hitter control the strike zone like Bonds, and he takes strike 1 on a pitch outside. Percival can't walk Bonds. He has to throw this next pitch in the strike zone. So he does.
Ripped into right field. It's a 1-run game as Bonds gets his second of the series.
Bonds annihilates this baseball an estimated 485 feet into the right field bleachers. The scoreboard changes before it even lands. The camera cuts to Angels star outfielder Tim Salmon, who says it's the furthest hit ball he's ever seen. It's the type of blast that would have easily ended up in McCovey Cove, where at Bonds' home ballpark. Instead, the ball attempts to exit the park via a tunnel halfway up the bleachers. The Angels Stadium crowd grows restless, but the score remains 11-10. Percival retires Benito Santiago to even up the series, but Bonds sends a powerful message. He'll be walked 13 times before the series is over, 7 intentionally. He'll also hit 4 home runs. This will ultimately culminate in the highest OPS in any postseason run with a minimum of 40 plate appearances, an absolutely historic effort. Bonds was a man possessed. This was the best chance he'd get to win a ring. Bonds had previously lost 3 consecutive National League Championship Series with the Pirates in the early 90s. No doubt he was frustrated by that when he decided to leave town and head west to San Francisco. Bonds' 2002 World Series performance didn't have any shortcomings, but the Giants failed to rally around him. Troy Percival closed the series in Game 7, and with that, the Anaheim Angels of California of Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim won the World Series. In some ways, baseball is a selfish, individual sport, a series of one-on-ones between the batter and the pitcher who has a monopoly over the baseball itself. That veneer strips away to reveal that baseball is, in fact, the ultimate team game. James Harden could take as many shots as he wants, but Barry Bonds only occupies one of 9 spots in the batting order. The best player of our current generation has appeared in just 3 playoff games, but all that won't make Bonds feel any better about losing this series. As the Angels celebrate on the field, the Fox cameras eagerly cut to Bonds' face, hoping to capture a moment of frustration or despair. It isn't enough that the Angels have won. The American public demands evidence that there's a loser whose heart has been ripped out. He sits in the shadows of the Giants' dugout, stoic. Bonds and the media always had it out for each other. Years after his retirement, Bonds would own up to some of his past transgressions, describing his actions as flat out dumb. That relationship, or lack thereof, did Bonds no favors in the wake of the BALCO scandal. In just a few years' time, he would become the face of the league-wide steroid era. It's April 16th, 2004. Dodgers at Giants. Bottom of the ninth, 1 out, and a runner on first. Dodgers are leading 3-0. Once again, Barry Bonds lumbers up to the plate. This is early in Bonds' 2004 season, in which he put up the highest on-base percentage and OPS in MLB history. Once again, you could make an entire video about the numbers on this screen, but I want to talk about Eric Gagne. In 2003, Gagne put up arguably the greatest relief pitcher season of all time. He became the only pitcher in MLB history to throw 70 innings and post a sub-1 FIP, that's short for fielding independent pitching. He also struck out 44% of all batters faced, won the Cy Young Award, and threw a round white ball at speeds over 100 miles per hour. So on one side you have Gagne coming off arguably the greatest relief season ever, and Bonds entering arguably the greatest hitting season ever. The unstoppable force and immovable object are about to meet. So, do you pitch to Bonds? Of course you do. Gagne doesn't want the tying run to come to the plate, and he's, Eric Gagne. By the way, Gagne admitted to eating a balanced breakfast every morning as well, so this is a fair matchup even if you don't like players eating healthy foods. The first pitch is a 98-mile-per-hour four-seamer that Bonds pulls foul. Gagne then decides to go inside, just catching the edge of the strike zone with another heater. Bonds is quickly behind 0-2. 0 balls and 2 strikes is not a friendly count for anybody. It turns superhumans into scrubs. Mike Trout doesn't hit like Mike Trout after an 0-2 count for his career, and neither did Bonds. But during that terrifying 4-year stretch, from 2001 to 2004, he raked. He still slugged over 600 after an 0-2 count. How the f do you get this guy out? But Gagne has an ace up his sleeve. After 2 heaters, he turns to his slow curve. Bonds just spits on it. Gagne throws this pitch 25 miles per hour slower than his fastball, and Bonds has the audacity to take this pitch mere centimeters below the zone. In 2002, Barry Bonds and Eric Gagne were in Japan on an all-star tour. Bonds frequently complained about not getting pitches to hit. Gagne said, "You know what? If I get a 3-run lead one time and I come in, I'll face you." Bonds said, "All right, all fastballs?" Gagne replied, No, not all fastballs. I can use one off speed." Gagne has just used his off speed. The 4th pitch is a fastball taken inside. Gagne continues to challenge Bonds, who fouls off a pitch up and in. Both dugouts are absolutely fixated on this matchup. They know they're witnessing something special. Gagne subtly shakes off a changeup call. That wasn't part of the gentleman's agreement. He lets another fastball rip.
Let's go fastball in. Well, that's going to end up in the water. But, that's a 101-mile-per-hour fastball pulled foul.
The broadcast claims 99 miles per hour, but the stadium radar gun reads 101. Bonds, knowing that the fastball is coming, is early on 101 miles per hour. But he wasn't early for what came next.
Center field, hit well. This baby's gonna go. At 100 miles per hour. Wow.
Gagne would go on to win the game, extending a save streak that eventually reached 84 without a blown save. But this at-bat goes into the annals of baseball history as one of the greatest batter-pitcher matchups ever captured on video. It's raw power on raw power, the perfect example of everything right and everything wrong with baseball in this era. At the end of the 2004 season, Bonds would take home his 4th consecutive MVP award. No other player in MLB history has won more than 3 for their entire career. It's September 26th, 2007, the last home game of a disappointing San Francisco Giants season, as they currently sit at the bottom of the NL West standings. Bonds had passed Hank Aaron in August, but had been taking it easy on a non-contending team. This was his first game in 11 days. As luck would have it, this will be his 3rd at-bat versus Jake Peavy, who is concluding a Triple Crown Cy Young season with the Padres. Peavy had gotten the best of Bonds their first 2 matchups, forcing 2 groundouts. Hopefully Bonds will do better this time around. Do you pitch to Bonds? Well, he's 43 years old and you're a Triple Crown winner with a 7-run lead. I'm thinking that's a yes. But Bonds is never an easy out, and he takes control of the situation by taking Peavy's first 2 pitches for balls. While an 0-2 count is nearing a death sentence for the hitter, 2-0 is a gargantuan advantage. In Bonds' career, over half of his at-bats that reached a 2-0 count ended in a walk. When they reached that point, the opposing pitchers collectively said, I'm just gonna walk him. But Jake Peavy won't. He challenges Bonds. Bonds just misses a home run to the deepest part of the park. He embraces Peavy, removes his helmet, and exits to a standing ovation. We didn't know it at the time, but that was the last plate appearance of Barry Bonds' career. 2 days earlier, the New York Times had reported that Bonds wouldn't be returning to San Francisco that offseason, but his 2007 slash line was still absurd, highlighted by a .480 on-base percentage. No player has reached that mark since. Not Mike Trout, not Joey Votto, none of them. Nobody has reached a .480 on-base percentage. There were a variety of reasons why the Giants wouldn't want Bonds back. He was embroiled in a PED scandal, seen as a clubhouse cancer, and the Giants weren't particularly competitive at the time. While the 43-year-old Bonds was a headache and perhaps no longer a good choice to play the field, there were American League contenders that could have used his services. The Angels won 100 games without a huge contribution from their designated hitters. Compare that to Bonds' 2008 ZiPS projection, and he could have made a great team even better. The Rays ended up winning the pennant, but entered Game 1 of the World Series with Willie Ibar as their designated hitter? Kind of a wild move when Bonds was willing to play for a league minimum salary. Look, I'm not a GM, but 400 on base percentage is 400 on base percentage. Barry Bonds could have helped your team in 2008, and potentially beyond, but ball clubs didn't want anything to do with the disgraced home run champion. He had pushed the game to its absolute limit, and the only thing that could stop him was the fallout. An unceremonious conclusion to a fabled career. On the day Bonds took his last swing, fashion designer Mark Ecko, who had acquired the record-breaking 756 ball, announced that it would be branded with an asterisk, an entire legacy defaced. Bonds has had to grapple with his failed pursuits of a World Series ring, de facto exile from his playing career, a perjury case that went to court, as well as a Hall of Fame candidacy left in the hands of the media members he so greatly despised. Meanwhile, the commissioner of the sport, who turned a blind eye to and ultimately benefited from the steroid era, has had no such trouble obtaining a Cooperstown plaque. Even in this moment, Bonds is robbed of a storybook ending, as this fly ball comes up just short. Bonds has recently described himself as a ghost, rattling around an empty house. His specter still looms over the entire sport. Throughout his 22-year career, no one has questioned Barry Bonds' love for the game of baseball. It was everything else that gave him pause. But does baseball love him back? And has he done enough to deserve that embrace? You'll have to decide for yourself. And that was Bonds in 4. Hey, big thank you to my newest patrons. If you want to support baseball bits just like them, go to patreon.com/foolishbaseball. Take care.